Captain Peter Cutsie in South Korea, and this is my briefing room. This is part two of the engine separation. As I mentioned in part one, we covered all of these items on the right of the screen, but we really didn't get into the actual checklist itself. So tonight we will do just that. The engine fire or severe damage or separation, when calling for the checklist, remember the checklist really comes quite a bit later than the actual separation, which occurred right on V1. We had many things to do. We had to aviate, which we reviewed, fly the airplane. We had to navigate, prepare ourselves to get set up to return to the airport, is what we were assuming for this scenario. And we had to set up a holding pattern. We had to do a quick review, a very quick DODAR to make sure that we did do the recall items, and we did. We did a communication with ATC primarily, and then yet to come would be a communication with the flight attendants and also with the company. Now, we're in the hold, and we actually call for the first checklist. So engine fire or engine severe damage or separation is how the pilot flying would call for the checklist. One or more of these occur, the engine fire warning, not applicable. And airframe vibrations with abnormal engine indications could be applicable. Engine separation, definitely applicable, as we identified it, remember. So having a look at if we can just go back for one little quick review as far as identifying, remember when we identified, we basically had no parameters on the engine that separated plus a fault light. So we've covered that, and that was just a quick review. Auto throttle if engaged, disengage. Thrust lever, affected engine confirmed close. Engine start lever, affected engine confirmed cutoff. Now remember, this is the checklist portion to ensure that you really have done the recall items. Engine fire switch for the affected engine confirmed hold. So to manually unlock the engine fire switch, press the override and pull. We reviewed that, and that's what we would be doing. Now that's the end of the review of the memory items as part of the checklist. Choose one. High vibration occurs and continues after engine is shut down. Well, if that is the case, without delay, reduce airspeed and descend to a safe altitude, which results in an acceptable vibration level. In this case, that doesn't apply because we're right on takeoff. But this checklist caters for the problem at any altitude. So note, if high vibration returns and further airspeed reduction and descent are not practical, increase the airspeed can reduce the vibration. So for today, we're low level, so not applicable. So go to step 7. Isolation, valve switch, close. Pilot monitoring, of course, is doing this. Back switch for the affected side off. This step causes the operating pack to regulate to high flow in flight with the flaps up. Now remember that the pilot monitoring is reading the checklist and doing. And when the pilot monitoring actually reads a function, the pilot flying is focusing on flying the airplane. APU bleed switch off. Choose one. APU is available for start it. And when the APU is running, the APU generator switch for the affected side on. Before you do that, make sure your autopilot is engaged to the side with the good engine. And remember, we talked about that before, that when you actually are going to engage an autopilot, if it was engine number 2 that separated, then engage autopilot A. If it was engine number 1 that separated, engage autopilot B. If you had done that previously and you forgot to check it again, you would be okay. But in any case, make sure you talk about this. So if the APU is running, APU generator for the affected side on only after the autopilot is on the good side. If APU is not available, go to step 11. Balance fuel as needed. Now, it depends on how long you've been since you actually have the separation, because you may actually get an imbal light on, indicating that you must do the imbal checklist. But if the imbal light is not on and you both agree, you can do the balancing fuel portion of the supplementary procedures by memory. If both of you agree and your company SOPs don't prevent it. If you suspect a fuel leak, well, then you had better not do it by memory. In any case, your company SOPs will dictate to you what you should be doing if the imbal light is not on. The imbal light is on, you have no choice. And you may want to do that checklist prior to doing any more on this checklist, depending on how severe it is and how long you've been actually flying on one engine. So this is where airmanship comes in. For this particular company, they had two different types of aircraft. So transponder to TA or transponder to TA only. This prevents climb commands, which can exceed single engine performance capability. Remember, when you have your transponder set to TA only, the other aircraft's logic and reading knows that you are basically an incapacitated airplane, so the commands to deviate would be given to the good airplane without an engine problem. That's why it's important that this selection is made. So plan to land at the nearest suitable airport. Somewhere tucked away in your memory, you may be heading towards a suitable airport at this point. It doesn't have to be just, hey, if it was en route, you're going to do it right away. But in this case, are you coming back to land? We are. Our assumption today was the weather was good and the runway condition was good, so we're going to come back and land in today's scenario. But if you're en route, you should be thinking about landing at the nearest suitable airport long before this point. And that's important. You've got a fixed page. You may not be ETOPS, but if you think that every flight is really ETOPS, then your thinking and professionalism is of a high standard. You've got a fixed page. Put on the airports that you know on the route, along the route, that actually are good airports, not just adequate, but suitable if you did have to land en route. So this is all part of airmanship thinking you should be using. And remember that fixed page that has a 511 nautical mile circle radius. Excuse me. So do not use FMC performance predictions. All right. You're going to have to use the actual engine out performance as far as fuel flow if you're going en route. And that's in the back of the QRH. So go to the one engine and operative landing checklist. Now remember what I said in section 1. You do this checklist as the first checklist. So the engine fire or engine severe damage or separation checklist is done first. The second checklist is the after takeoff checklist. The next checklist would be any of the non-normal checklists that we covered in part 1. If it's engine number 1, you're going to have to do a hydraulic system A checklist. And when you're ready to lower the gear, you're going to have to do a manual gear extension. If it's engine number 2, you're going to have to do the checklist for the loss of system B, and also you're going to have to do the use the alternate flap checklist in order to raise and or extend trailing edge flap. And any other checklist. Maybe you've got a checklist called fuel in bow. Maybe you came down to the point where you didn't really think about balancing fuel before you got to the fuel in bow. That's airmanship. And if you both agree that before you start doing any other checklist, and you both agree that you don't suspect a fuel leak, and you both agree that your company SOPs don't state that you can't do this by memory, get the fuel balancing done. 3 steps. And if you're not sure, get the supplementary procedures out and pilot monitoring will read. Now, when you're finished all the non-normal checklists, the last one is the one engine and operative landing checklist. So what we'll do is we'll just finish this as part 2, and we'll do a part 3 where we actually go into the one engine and operative landing checklist. So thank you for watching. Information to contact me on screen. This briefing will be put in the briefings package under the MP4 file. And of course, the PowerPoint that I used in section 1 is also right now in the briefing package. See you in part 3 of the engine separation. Thank you.